We're here for the Littleton Planning Board meeting, Thursday, December 12th, here in room 103 in Shattuck Street. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance and we'll go. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have an proposed agenda, and the first item is board business. We have the minutes of the prior meeting of November 14th. Did anyone have any comments on that, on those minutes? If there's no comments, can I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes of November 14th.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next, bills. Are there any bills? Are we going to get them circulated around?
Yep, two peer review bills from Green International for the Strawberry Farm subdivision, ongoing construction there.
Okay, we'll pass those around.
So I have to sign it?
Yes, you have to, Bartlett. Next item, member input, member update on projects. I can report that Northern Banks Foundation is going in. Have they gotten a full building permit yet, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Sort of exciting to see something happening there. Do we have any update on the last affordable units at Hager Homestead?
Yes, the 60% AMI unit was the last affordable unit that has closed. And so we were able to put together our application to HLC to add the 2 units to our subsidized housing inventory.
Okay, excellent. Affordable Housing Trust people, I think there was some concern that that unit was the last to sell, but it has sold. You know, it sort of indicates there's a demand, and we'll get to that subject later in the meeting. King Street Commons, we're going to hear, have you heard anything? We're hearing from them in January. Anything else?
That's the latest that I've heard.
Okay.
Yep.
Town newsletter, we did manage, thank you, Cooper, to put something in the town newsletter. I would encourage any of the board members, if they have a topic that they'd like to develop for the town newsletter, talk to Cooper and I. I haven't actually seen it. I don't think I've even seen the town newsletter, but has anyone else seen it? Okay. Did you have any comments or?
No, I think it's important to put something in when we've got information to share about stuff that's upcoming. So
Right.
once we decide what's going to be in the spring warrant, then
Yeah.
that would be a good idea.
Okay, and maybe, you know, it's a tough thing because, for instance, with King Street Commons, the all of the materials that they submit to us will be on our website. I mean, will be on our page, but that doesn't seem to be enough. So I guess if we had something in the newsletter, we could refer them to the page.
Well, I would just wanted to say, remember, it takes 7 times for a person to see something before it
Okay,
actually
that's a good point.
impacts.
Yeah, Miss
the more the
Marketer.
better.
Miss Marketer, okay.
And after 100 times, they'll believe it.
Or, yeah.
But that's only if it's the truth.
What is true? What is true?
It only takes 4 times if it's a falsehood.
Okay, so the point being that we shouldn't just think we're done after one.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
245 Foster Street, anything going on?
the news that I think we shared last meeting was that that site's being used by Onyx Construction as their construction staging for the reconstruction of Foster Street from Taylor Street up through the Balsam Lane intersection.
Okay. And is there anything else, do the AHC people want to talk about Durkee Farm, or?
Bartlett?
There was a walkthrough of the Durkee Farm by some members of the Historical Commission. There's a consultant. The consultant has issued a report saying that both the house and the barn have some historical significance. The house has been pretty much not entirely modernized or changed on the inside, but a lot of it has. The barn is pretty much intact. She thought it was early 19th century, which I thought it was later than that, but
It
I don't
probably
know.
is, yeah.
So, there's our recommendation that it's a valuable building, and the Historical Commission would like to keep it. And we're negotiating how much of it we're going to keep, and the Historical Commission has said that they would participate in paying for some of it, but they don't have as much money as the Housing Trust does, so they're not promising to pay for all of it.
Okay, good.
I think that's
Yeah.
about it.
Well, that's moving.
It's moving, and I did get a list of 3 architectural firms that have specialized in preservation and restoration and that kind of thing, so I just got that this afternoon.
Talk to whoever, it was MZO,
Yeah, we have talked to
yeah.
Jim,
'Cause they did-
Jim
they-
Z something, yeah.
Because they did 12 Robinson.
They did 12 Robinson, and there was a house in Westford that they did too,
Yeah.
that got restored. Yeah, we have spoken to him. I walked through the house. He was with us on the initial walkthrough this a couple months ago. He was very enthusiastic. He thought that, all things could be done, but we should start with, for the house itself, we should start with a budget of, $500,000 and have a $200,000 contingency that we would be ready to spend. So that's probably what we're looking at, but I don't know.
But it's interesting that now you're able to piggyback on the historic value.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
there's probably
pretty-
some historic tax credits that we can get.
Well, but
eventually.
even that, there's CPC money.
Mhm.
And, but it means that there's more than one
More than one
reason. Yeah.
one entity in town supporting it and paying for it.
Yeah. And 12 Robinson is pretty much finished. The rear 2 units are on the market. And not sold, or not, Joe says it's not the time of year to, get a lot of interest, but I'm sure he'll sell them. And they don't have much left to do on the front, the 2 historic ones. The barn especially, I mean, you really, I'd be happy to meet you over there sometime and you guys, because the barn especially, I think is probably much easier to redevelop into something marketable and they did a good job there. It's
Okay.
really nice. Okay.
What's the condition of the barn and the house? What's the condition of them?
The house is in pretty tough shape. I mean, it's been empty since sometime in the teens. The roof is, I think, still intact. There's a little bit of leakage around the chimney flashing. There was a serious fire in the building at one time, nobody knows when, so a lot of the roof rafters have been sistered. We can't really tell much about the post and beam structure because it's all concealed. But the impression is that most of it is pretty sound. The back of the wall of the building is quite questionable. The real question is the floor framing in the basement of the first floor. A lot of that is, branches with bark on them, and there's some substantial, like 8x8 beams that have just been cut off in the middle, and, somebody threw a rusty lally column underneath.
This sounds like my house.
Well, I'd be glad to show it, this one
Well,
to you, and you
I-
can compare.
You know,
So-
Don't make that like a reason not to go
No,
forward.
I'm just saying that there's a lot of structural issues in that floor structure.
Mhm.
And probably the whole floor, first floor structure would have to be replaced, or at least in that quarter of the
Well,
building.
and that's why a structural engineer will need to be brought
We
in.
really need to get somebody who could make a informed judgment. The barn, I would say, is in really good shape. It is mortise and tenon, post and beam,
Oh, okay.
all throughout. The difficulty with the barn is that the framing for the second level, going in on the main level, which is above the ground floor basement, the framing for the next level up, which is not anywhere near the whole width of the building, is the top of that framing is at 7 feet roughly off the floor. So it's really not usable as residential space the way it's set up.
You need to see 12 Robinson.
I do.
Yeah.
My thought is just to, cut those mortise and tenon off, raise those beams up a foot, support them with steel or something, and, then there's room to raise the second level, the third level, 2 feet, because that's set 2 feet below where the rafters meet the top plate. And that would give us, a livable headroom on both levels, so we could make a 3-story project out of it.
Okay.
Have rooms in the attic.
So I'll express my concern, I see about the value of preserving the historic sites and the other parts there, but do you do the preservation with public funds or sell it with a historic restriction on it
That's-
there in terms of, is there more efficient use of our public funds that can go a lot further versus totally reconstructing some of that historic
Right,
pieces there?
that's-
Because a lot of them are in such state that you end up gutting, basically rebuilding it from scratch, and is that really the best use of the public funds?
We haven't determined that. We're sort of in a very exploratory stage, what informed, experienced people think would be possible and how much it would cost. And we're going to have a very difficult time finding a developer to do, somewhere in the vicinity of 8 to 10 units of housing there, because it's just such a small development that it doesn't make economic sense for most developers. And you throw the historic thing in there too, and that makes it more difficult for them. So, we're just kind of stuck with what we have and figuring out what we're doing with it.
Okay. The next item was update planning board special permit application forms.
Do you want to take this?
So, this was at the last meeting, and planning staff had updated the Form 1B to comply with the new,
The new small wireless, the 5G part of the town code that was passed 4 years ago, several years ago.
Okay, and so what is our next step?
Right, please make any additional comments on that Form 1B application. If no additional comments, if you would vote to adopt the updated form.
I had one quick comment that it's like a typo, just want to make sure. So on page 2, in the final sentence before Part B, it says applicant shall submit any, sorry, it's right above there. So it starts with the sentence, copy of the request made by the applicant, and if you look at the very last sentence, it says the application will be considered complete with respect to the requirements of this if such response is not received within 60 days, sorry, I'm very tired. If such response is not received within 60 days, the application will be considered incomplete instead of complete. Because if the response is not received, then wouldn't,
Right, see, the town can require the applicant to reach out to FAA and FCC. Town cannot require that a response be provided from those federal agencies.
so it's like an opt-out kind of?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that it shouldn't say incomplete instead of complete. Okay. All right, and then, in the very last sentence of page 4, planning board just needs to be capitalized.
Capitalized.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Could I hear a motion to adopt the special permit application forms for wireless communications facilities as updated?
So moved.
Second.
I'll just do a roll call. Anna?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes. Bartlett?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Okay, so that's adopted. We've issued a planning board meeting schedule for the first half of next year. Were there any comments? I think we were doing this on the Google Docs. Everyone okay? I mean, assuming things may change, but for now?
I
Any other-
cannot do March 6th.
Okay. Okay. We can consider, when we get up to that point, whether there's, momentous, that is probably a important meeting because it's running up against the town meeting schedule. So we'll consider maybe moving that, if we moved it, well, when's the school break? That's what we have to work around.
Usually
in April.
February and April.
Okay, so we could possibly move that back a week if we needed to.
So would everybody be available for what, the 13th?
The
would be
13th, is there any conflicts that we can think of at the
Not that
moment?
I know of at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you, Anna?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be
So
better
let's-
for me.
let's
Thank
plan
you.
on that.
Thank you. And it's very helpful to have this discussion now so we know
Yeah.
what to shoot for as well.
Sure. Next item on board business is public input. We have people here today. I know what some of you are here for. Is there anyone who would like to bring anything up for this meeting? Okay, we'll go forward at 6:50 almost. The next item is 95 Taylor Street, vote on lot release request. Lauren, can you take this over? There was some communication about the bond, and you suggested that, we have voted on the bond amount. The bond,
We're working
okay,
through the bond form.
right.
And the request from the board, we have a written request for the lot release. I'm asking the board to vote on the lot release. You've seen the lot release document, and the request is for you to vote on the lot release and sign that tonight. Ask me to hold it until we have confirmation from the town treasurer that the bond has been posted
Okay.
with the treasurer.
Any comments? No? Okay. Could I then ask the board to have a motion to vote on the lot request, the lot release request for 95 Taylor Street?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second,
I'll go again. Anna?
yes.
Daryl?
I just want to clarify, the lot release is contingent on confirmation that
Yes.
the bond has been posted.
The actual,
I'd like the motion to actually read that.
Yeah. That's,
Okay.
You
that's
didn't-
what,
yes.
He didn't add that.
I
last
didn't
week
add,
back.
okay, in
Okay.
terms of this motion, the lot request release is approved contingent upon the verification that
The bond is.
the bond has been met, and apparently it's going to be a complicated thing. No? Okay. So, Anna, I'll go back to you.
Yes.
Okay, Daryl?
Yes.
Bartlett?
yes.
I'm a yes.
So we'll send around 2 copies of the lot release for your signatures. One is a duplicate original, in case I spill coffee on one of them.
1, 2, 3 inclusive.
So, our next item, which is agendaed for 7 o'clock, is to open, thank you, to open a public hearing at 550 Newtown Road. I want to go back a little bit, and we've had a previous hearing on this development, which was then withdrawn, and they're back with a new proposal, which is similar, but has some enhancements, let's say. And at the time of this proposal, the building department would like to use this process to basically document the existing building, which a lot of alterations have been made over the years that had not been permitted. So in the interest of that, we've asked the owner to do that, to document the existing building. Right now, that's not it's just a square footage, but the interior layout is not, there's no documentation in the building department, as I understand it. So, for that reason, they are going to undertake to do that, to document the plan of the existing building. And because of that, they will not be here tonight. We will open the hearing, but they will not be here tonight to present the project. They're going to do that at our January meeting, which is
January 9th.
January 9th.
And my apologies with the wrong number date on the
Okay,
agenda.
so, do we have any, I assume many of you are here for that hearing. Do we have any questions about what's happening here?
No questions, but do we present any ideas that we are wondering about, or?
I would prefer to have them come present the project. You have this, if you go to our their proposal is on the website. I hesitate to make any comments because I would like them to present it, but one of the main things they did was add a second driveway, and at the rear, the building seems to be very similar to what was proposed before, if not exactly the same. But in the back, they have created, a large grade to reduce the apparent height of the building. But once again, I'd like them to go over what exactly they're thinking. The other thing is, I was at the previous hearings, and one of the main, there were a lot of, what they've done in this project is actually provide actual wetland boundaries, whereas before they were just vague. They've done, what they should have done the first time. The other thing, I haven't studied it, but they provided a landscape plan for the front of the building, which was one of the issues for abutters. But the actual meat of the project, which is the storage units, is pretty much the same as what it was before.
One comment I'd have is actually on the existing building. I don't know if you're interested in that.
Well, I think we will be interested in it, because this is why we're pushing the hearing back.
So do you want an hour? Or
Sure, you can
Okay,
speak.
the light pollution in large amounts.
Okay.
Name and address.
Yeah, they have like 5 big LED spotlights.
Not really.
And we have some written comments that were provided along those lines that are posted to the
Okay,
website.
so these are
I
all
would suggest that since you're not opening the hearing,
Right.
that...
So these are all subject to, we're happy to know this, but there is not, we will open the hearing at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock. It's so dark now, it may as well be 12 o'clock. Anyway, so, but all these things are going to be subject to our review in the hearing. And we do have a light pollution bylaw in Littleton.
We do.
Yeah.
And if there are comments that anybody wants to submit, they could submit them by email to my email address.
Yeah, and you might want to consider doing that.
Can we bring the septic system into this too? Because I know you guys have nothing on their septic system that they're supposedly being built there.
That isn't our purview. That's
Right,
Board of
but
Health.
How their building might react to, wouldn't you want to know is where it's going to be at compared to where the building's at? Or does that make no?
Well, those are on the drawings, and they're actually building up the grade. This is all for the hearing.
Right.
Yeah. But the actual details of the septic system are not our purview.
No, I just figure more the location of it than,
Yeah.
the details of how they're building it and all that.
Right. Anything else? Yeah.
As someone who lives down the hill from the building,
Mhm.
I'm concerned about the wastewater runout because we already flood. So, and we were not included in the abutters. So how do we get notified when the hearings are held?
Go to our website. Go to the town website, which has all the meetings and agendas of every board.
But I went, and that's why I'm here tonight.
Yes.
And now I come out, and it's not.
The hearing will be, and I apologize, but we had no way of, yeah. So now you know that, do we want to have a time, do we have a, let's set a time for,
Yep, so hearing would continue to Thursday, January 9th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
This room again.
Thursday, January 9th, room 103.
7 o'clock again.
Yeah,
That's my recommendation.
that's fine. The only, the other thing is 5:50, right? Okay, anything else? So I'm going to ask Maren to read the notice of the hearing. We're going to open it, and then we're going to continue it to January.
Okay, public hearing, the Littleton Planning Board will open a public hearing on Thursday, December 12, 2024, at 7 p.m. in room 103 of the 37 Shattuck Street Town Offices to consider an application for special permits pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, and the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application is for a major commercial use special permit under Sections 17386 through 17388, site plan under Sections 17316 through 17319, and stormwater permit under Chapter 38, Article 2, Stormwater Management and Erosion Control, all of the Code of the Town of Littleton. Property 550 Newtown Road, Assessors Map U30, Parcel 10-0. Applicant Kimley Horn, owner Storage Rentals of America. The applicant is requesting to construct a new 85,012 square feet self-storage building and provide stormwater and associated site improvements. Application and plans can be viewed online at the Planning Board page of the town website or at the Planning Board and Town Clerk's office during their business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed application should provide written comment to the Planning Board office. My email address, m2hill@littletonma.org, by December 10th, if possible, or attend the public hearing. Daryl Baker, clerk.
Okay. The hearing will cover every aspect of their proposed plan, including water management, lighting, the actual conformance with our planning bylaws, and it's the opportunity for anyone else to bring up concerns.
Excuse me. Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Excuse me. During our public input section, we heard that a couple of comments that people are planning on presenting at the hearing. It'd be advisable for the applicant to review the minutes or this view to understand what types of issues are going to be coming up that
Sure.
we will be paying special attention to. Since people have raised concerns, we're probably going to be looking at them. The applicant may want to make sure that they're prepared to address those types of concerns, since he already has a heads up
You have
as to what.
a relationship with the person. Yeah.
Yep.
And I would
So we can use the time efficiently rather
Right.
than have them
come back.
come back and come back.
Although, in a project of this nature and size, it's not likely that this is disposed of in one.
No, I realize that, but I'm just looking at the people that did take the time to give us
Sure.
a heads up as to what their concerns are. They should be telegraphed immediately, directly to the applicant.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Could I ask one quick question?
yeah.
Out of ignorance. You said that we have a town bylaw on light pollution. Is it accessible online somewhere?
It should be in the bylaw. I can't tell you what it is. And it's not a night sky bylaw, but it's basically a bylaw that is intended to limit the spillage of light onto adjacent properties.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I would suggest the vote to continue.
Do we need a motion for that? Okay.
I make a motion to continue the hearing until January 9th at 7 p.m.
Second?
Anna,
Yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We're now at the next agenda item, which are discussion items. Maren is going to give us a little talk about updating the Littleton Common Revitalization Roadmap. And this is particularly timely because since the original one, we've achieved quite a bit. We've achieved, or will have achieved, a sewer. We will have done the form-based code. So it is an appropriate time to look at revisiting that effort, planning effort.
Yes, the roadmap was published in January of 2019. The landscape has changed significantly since that time. In the Economic Development Bond Bill, the Massachusetts Leads Act that was just signed, passed by the legislature and signed by the governor very recently, it included an earmark for the town of Littleton, so we can update the revitalization roadmap. The town administrator's office has agreed that the $6,000 they have for matching funds can be used to help augment the public outreach portion of that study. We had already reached out to the UMass Donahue Institute. They had drafted a scope of services when this was a grant application. That grant wasn't awarded, but I grabbed that scope of services. I'm working with their team to update that scope, what they can do for the funds allotted, and some of their recommendations on things we should focus on, given the changes that have happened at the Common, the new zoning, the stormwater, and then the differences in the economic underpinnings today.
So what are the funds available?
60,000 from the earmark, plus 5 from the town. Rather than overlapping public outreach processes, what I'm thinking and what works for UMass Donahue Institute is they will do some background work, gather data, crunch numbers, to kick off the program starting probably in February or early March. To start conducting public outreach shortly after the May town meeting. And the public outreach would focus mostly on getting input from the property owners and business owners in the Littleton Common area, in the area of the study, and work with them on what their development plans might be, tie that into what sewer capacity might be available in their timeframes. So it's not, we already have the roadmap that says this is what Littleton wants, Littleton residents want for that area. Now it's a refining of the economic portion of that study.
Any comments, Anna?
I think my comment really pertains to the pages, I think it's 86 to 91 of the report that talks about the pedestrian aspects and the traffic. So I will beat this dead horse one more time, and that is that if we have an opportunity to be able to actually determine if and how the pedestrian access ways will make the most sense for residents, how the traffic can be flowed better, if there's anything within this report, because it is a revitalization roadmap, so the pun there is the roads, right? So let's try and figure out what UMass Donahue is able to do to be able to provide greater clarity to the residents about what we would like to be able to have. I know that there's already some information in there, but given the progress that's been made, obviously there are still concerns by residents about traffic, about pedestrian access, bicycle access, the whole safety aspect of it. So if UMass Donahue can do that, that I think would be an essential component to the document.
Okay, I think that's sort of interesting because it intersects with, we just did this big bike pedestrian, report. And there has been some talk, and Mr. Rombacher, you can maybe weigh in on this, of there is a, I forget what the term was, but the legislature gave towns a little bit more ability to override the state in its traffic, for the purposes of pedestrian safety and et cetera. And that's definitely deficient in especially Great Road. Anyway, so, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. And I'll just give an example where leaving in the morning time, there are folks who perhaps are new to Littleton, perhaps are not from Littleton, I don't know, but they're literally walking down Great Road rather than crossing the street to where, there's a little sliver of sidewalk. They're literally walking in traffic,
Oh,
sometimes even with
yeah.
children. So to the degree that we can do something where there are sidewalks, that would be great. And again, I recognize that there probably are sidewalks in the plans, but being able to communicate that in an effective way to the public would be really helpful.
Well, as I understand it, having gone in the last few years through these various, reports, a lot of them provide the framework for grant applications. Is there anything in this roadmap that would do that? Or is it something that, have you referred to it in grant applications up to now, the existing one?
Yes, every piece of foundational planning work that we do always helps with the next grant application. The roadmap also included as an appendix a series of types of funding that is available.
Okay.
There's a lot of food for thought there on the best way to get at that piece of the information. The pedestrian.
Because we're also having some state highway improvements that are in the pipeline in that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. Just got notice that from MassDOT about the deck replacement of the bridge, the Route 119 bridge over 495. That's a few years down the road, a few years away. We have assurances of funding already for the Route 119 bridge culvert over Beaverbrook. The town is going to be adding a request for some resiliency improvements. After looking at the updated floodplain maps, it's clear that there's a problem with one of the drainage areas that crosses 495 near the 119 bridge over 495. So.
Is there still
That's-
talk about the rotary at Beaverbrook? Is that still on or are they just,
I haven't heard lately.
okay.
Good question.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that would be just a little further.
Yeah, I know
would
it's
be
not part of
further down
the
road.
revitalization roadmap.
But yeah, it does make a lot of sense to focus on this area.
Daryl, any comments?
No, I mean, I like the idea of us revisiting sidewalks and where we're placing them, because for the longest time, I don't know if it's this board, I think it was this board, was waiving sidewalk requirements left and right, so we don't end up with sidewalks in a lot of places. I live in a development that's got a sidewalk to nowhere because it just ends on Great Road, which means we're a subdivision that you've got a 50-mile-an-hour road that before you can connect to anything there with no infrastructure to support that. So it's not just at one; it's at all ends of these roads that cross-cut us here. That they're not walkable. They're not safe.
Oh, I live in the common. I'm well aware of.
Oh, the common is actually more
Crossing.
safe. There's sidewalk
Well,
there.
but there's-
You go outside of the common and there's
crosswalks that no one pays attention to, and anyway. And there are sidewalks, but then there are traffic signs that you would slice your head open
Right.
if you walked. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, I mean, Violet.
I would just add that pedestrian traffic in the common area is going to increase greatly with the 1,000 apartment units that are proposed for that area.
We hope, yeah.
Well, it's going to happen eventually, and I think planning for it is better than not.
Sure, okay. So what are the next steps? You have,
So
now, was this gonna piggyback on the other thing we were asking UMass Donahoe to do? The affordable census, or,
that's a different group.
okay.
Yep, good question. So the contracting with UMass Donahue is a simple contract between the town administrator's office and UMass Donahue. Planning board has the opportunity to provide input to that scope of services as your staff is drafting with UMass
Yeah.
Donahue. So no planning board action is needed on this, but certainly appreciate your input on it.
Is it still going to be Mark and Rod?
I've been talking with Mark. No, I've been talking with Rod
Rod, okay.
about it, yes.
Great, it's good to have the continuity.
Yeah, and actually, they were very excited about being able to revisit a prior study, especially in the current time frame, given all that's happened in the last handful of years.
Okay, so when, will we need any official action?
No,
This is
there's-
between the town but we will eventually have some input on the report, or, okay. Next discussion item was the accessory dwelling unit bylaw update. As all of you know, the state has weighed in on basically allowing accessory dwelling units as of right and limiting towns in how they can accommodate them. Maren, do you want to talk about the highlights, or, I can, or whomever?
Yeah, I'll start and you'll fill in what I forget. So the state law sets accessory dwelling units at no greater than 900 square feet. Communities have to allow them by right after February 5th, 2025. Towns will not be able to enforce any zoning bylaws that are contrary to the new state requirements. State requirements include there can be no restrictions on ownership of the units. So there's no requirement for a property owner to live in one unit or the other.
So what that relates to our existing zoning is, first of all, we call them, we had something called an accessory dependent dwelling units. That's no longer relevant. We had accessory apartments, but we required them to be as part of a owner-occupied single-family dwelling or property. Our square foot area was larger than 900 square feet. Otherwise, there were some, I don't think the state has any problem with designing them to maintain the appearance of a single-family dwelling and all that kind of thing. And then we had a separate item for detached accessory apartments. Are you, or the building department, could they talk about how many of these units have been created?
If we had some continuity across time with staff, then that would be easy to tell. I can point to a couple of examples that have been very helpful to households in Littleton.
Well, I'm sort of curious as what the demand has been for these type of units. That's up to date, up to now.
Yeah, I'll probably get a handful of questions a year on what can be done. It's not a huge demand, but I wouldn't be surprised to see, half a dozen in a year.
One of the limitations in Littleton is sewerage, and for those properties in the common that will now have access to sewer, I'm sort of just curious how this will relate to the village common area, because that overlay already relaxes the zoning, and whether this is meaningful for that. But anyway, so
anyway, the state is not requiring communities to update our bylaw, but our bylaw gets very muddy if it doesn't match what the state requirements are. Part of my question for the board will be, do you want to address this right away while it's fresh in our mind, or is this something you want to delay for a while?
I wouldn't mind working toward town meeting unless we feel like we aren't equipped to understand the ramifications of it. I mean, what do people think?
Well, given the fact that ADUs can really help with the affordable housing issue in the state, I think getting it done sooner rather than later would be most helpful. And then I also wanted to point out that the link that was in our packet has a terrific graphic at the state which shows what is an ADU and 6 different versions of an ADU. I think it's just really, really helpful to the layperson to be able to understand what is meant by an ADU. So that would be
one of
helpful
one
for
of
us
the
to add.
big changes, I mean, the state is doing this because it wants to create ADUs as a housing, to create more housing, is that prior to this, you as the homeowner would have to basically build the ADU. Now, a developer can build a single-family home with an ADU, and unrelated to their ownership. So to some degree, it's happened in, like, I think some of the houses in Durkee Farm had really substantial in-law apartments. I think the last group that was built on the road there. But anyway, and that's just something to think about. And then the other thing to think about is the state is talking about limitations on short-term rentals, or on prescribing short-term rentals.
Right. The state would allow a restriction on ADUs being used for short-term rentals, so the town could enact that if you wanted to.
Yeah. So I think let's continue this, and we will. I think we should work toward bringing forward a bylaw to vote on, and
Yeah, and I think the
at town
short-term
meeting.
rental idea kind of goes along with it as well, so.
And so we would have a hearing sometime in the spring. People can talk about their concerns, but like the MBTA Communities Act, the state is, and the cannabis, the state is pretty much proscribing what we can do with this. Anyway, okay, so
Proceed with coming up
Yeah.
with a recommendation. The state will be, I think I mentioned before, they will be drafting a model ADU bylaw. They have issued their detailed guidelines as in draft form, and they're asking for comments on those right now. But so their state is still going through the process of how best to implement.
Is that what I was looking at? Did you, yeah,
The long, yeah.
okay.
The CMR on top of the page.
I don't remember, but when I realized they were asking for comments, I stopped
Yeah.
paying attention to it. Okay, the next item, so anyway, this is going to be a every meeting we're going to bring this up, and I encourage all of you to look at, or to get comments from the community, to look at press on this. It's a very current discussion topic in a lot of media. I know in my business, for instance, in California, they went so far as to actually issue designs that you could just take to the building department and get a building permit for, because they're so focused on this type of thing. Our town's a little different, but,
Yeah, I was, along with that, I was very impressed with the webpage that the state has put together on accessory dwelling units.
Okay.
They've done a good job of presenting the material in a digestible format.
Yeah, the two things that I had, I think if we're going to go down this path, we ought to take an opportunity to see if there's parts of our bylaws that should just come out then.
Oh,
And not have multiple sections, use a chance to simplify and consolidate the zoning there. I mean, if the state is going to issue a model bylaw, part of me wants to pace at that, so we don't have to redo all of the same work there. But I don't know what time.
I totally
they
agree,
have
and the
on
first
that.
thing is the accessory dependent dwelling units, they're not, I would encourage us all to look through our existing one and try to find what we'd like to add to the states. And some of it has to do with landscaping driveways, and,
Yeah.
these were things that, that could be, but the meat of it, I think you're correct, it should be as,
Yeah.
straightforward as
Yeah,
simple
I
as
would say
possible.
we take what we want and put it into the model
Yeah.
one, rather than going the other way around.
The bylaw also talked about renewing special permits, which are no longer, so.
And then the other part, you mentioned, the state's drive for affordable housing. Nothing in here indicates that these ADUs would count towards our affordable units.
No, I just meant for housing,
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, though.
but not
I mean,
affordable.
This is an interesting question, though.
Right,
Yeah.
only, that one I know, only those households that choose to put a deed restriction on the units would
So
be able to
this,
add.
this would
But-
adversely impact our subsidized housing index if people adopted them in a large number.
There's a question on that. I'm guessing that the state's not going to count the accessory dwelling units as another housing unit on the denominator of
Okay,
the
well,
SHI.
this is something to
We don't know yet,
figure out,
but,
yeah.
And I just want to make it clear that, it increases the number of units.
Right.
It has nothing to do with affordability, even though
Correct.
they're small units.
Right.
We don't want any association of those two terms, because in a way, this could be very detrimental if we have a bunch of them build up. That 10% number goes up substantially.
I don't think I said anything about
No.
affordability, I just
I
meant the
thought I
housing
heard
crisis.
affordability.
No, the housing crisis.
Well,
Yeah.
the theory is they're small. The theory is that the more housing you build,
And the smaller ones are
the less
affordable.
pressure there is on the existing housing stock for rent.
So I just meant
But I just
housing
want to
in
make sure
general.
that those are separate things.
But I think
Same
from the
thing.
common
Yeah.
point of view, this is my concern, that if they're counted as individual dwelling units and there's no.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
the state is asking each community to track the number of ADUs that go
Separately.
over time.
Separately.
So I'm guessing that won't be added to the denominator on the subsidized housing. My guess right now, but we'll see how it all
And
works out.
then likewise, I'd like to have a little more time to think, because again, tying it into also in terms of any short-term rental restrictions that we want to have. We don't want to see these pop up purely for the purpose of renting them for short-term rentals, my opinion.
I think that's a fair opinion, and some communities are finding that goes against their goal of providing housing for families and, whatever. So, anyway. Okay, so let's definitely, we should, I guess we won't know until March, February, what the state model bylaw is gonna be.
Well, yeah, best case scenario, middle of February, middle of January, it would be out, but that's just kind of a guess.
Okay, well, we'll keep talking about it, and I encourage all of you to gather, info.
Yep, and Cooper started putting together a comparison of Littleton's bylaw and the state requirements.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next item was the FEMA floodplain bylaw and maps update, which we've all been waiting for, this topic, I'm sure, and I'm saying that with the greatest amount of sarcasm I can muster.
I want to see maps. We love maps.
poring over on the FEMA website, they have a map viewer where you can see the differences but it's hard to read. There are so many colors, it's a little hard to
And there's
read.
no key to what the colors are.
Well,
It's hard to find.
You have to know how to find the key, exactly. So federal government is FEMA is issuing some new floodplain map panels, flood insurance rate maps that cover part of Littleton. Littleton has a floodplain bylaw. Well, we have a, quote, floodplain and wetlands bylaw. FEMA is updating the new panels. Littleton has to make reference to those new panels, where in our existing bylaw, we reference the old panels. During this map update, FEMA is also pushing MEMA to make sure that the communities bring their bylaws up to the current standards. They have a model bylaw that's fairly easy to navigate as far as model bylaws go. So my recommendation is, well, by this June, FEMA expects the towns Littleton to adopt a new floodplain bylaw, and that also utilizes the new mapping. So, town council is set to go drafting a bylaw.
Will they
using-
use the model?
Yes, using the model. Yeah. One of my recommendations is our current bylaw is a floodplain and wetlands bylaw, but Littleton has since adopted a extremely detailed wetlands bylaw. So there's in my opinion, no reason to have wetlands referenced in our zoning.
Would it be more complicated to separate them out?
It's already separated out.
Okay, fine.
In my opinion.
Okay.
We can have that discussion during, the process of
So when would we be able to look at the proposed floodplain bylaw?
I'll ask town council to have that ready
I
for
mean, because we're gonna have to have schedule a hearing and,
Yeah,
okay.
yep.
Anyway.
And let's see, so we have created a floodplain bylaw page off the Planning Board website. We have the link. Oh, and on our GIS, IT was able to post the preliminary floodplain maps, which is what the new ones are called. If you toggle back and forth on the GIS between the existing FEMA maps that are under the state information and the proposed preliminary ones, you can see the difference. But then FEMA on their website also has a viewer where you can see the differences.
Can you update the page that you created to include the link to the GIS?
I think so. It's just a link to the GIS. It doesn't turn on and off the layers.
No, the turn on and off is fine, but
Okay.
I don't, navigating our website is not the easiest.
I totally agree.
So if you point us to someplace, please include the link to
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Yep.
I spent a lot of time
I had
trying
a
to
question
find
about
stuff.
something that was in the mass.gov link. It referenced a floodplain administrator, that our town is supposed to have one. Do we currently have?
Yes, we do. It's, in our bylaws, it says the building inspector.
Okay,
I would recommend we update that to the building commissioner.
okay, all right.
Any other comments? Was there much variance?
I found it interesting to note that one of the areas of difference is the drainage that's between this building and the school complex back there. So as I was poring over the maps, I was, okay, what's causing that? You go downstream and you see that there is a big elevation differential between the upstream side and the downstream side of a culvert that carries drainage under Route 495. It's not far from the, the interchange, of course, obviously, the interchange of 119 and 495. So the timing on that worked out very well. So the town is asking to add a study and refurbishment, replacement, whatever is needed for that drainage stretch to be added to MassDOT's Resiliency Improvement Program that our MPO is working on right now.
So what this means is that there's a culvert isn't working as designed in 1959, and there's possibly a backup of water at this site behind us that is a result of that.
Right, and elevations up here, of course, not a concern. Elevations closer to the schools,
Right.
makes you think about what.
Well, Russell Street too, I mean, but, well, whatever.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
They'll have to work it out.
I mean, Beaver Brook backs up both at Mill Road and at King Street, where it goes under
Yeah.
the road there. I've seen it, quite high, at both of those places, almost flooding the road.
Yep.
So, yeah, culvert work needs to be.
Right, so, and I'm just excited, okay, planning geek, excited how some of the dots are actually connecting right now to be able to get some of this work accomplished.
Sure you don't want to be the floodplain administrator?
I would imagine that your next town planner probably has not done floodplain studies in their past life.
Okay.
So,
Okay, any other comments on that? Next is follow-up from town meeting marijuana bylaw policy direction. So one of the things that's happened that Maren passed along was that the state, or the case law, has it's requiring towns to allow medical marijuana cultivation, regardless of your intention. Is that the case?
Yes, there was a community that attempted to restrict the medical marijuana treatment centers, and AG's office did not allow that part of the bylaw. So,
But that's the treatment centers, which is that part of the cultivation?
well, that's
Yeah.
a cultivation, that's one of the types of cultivation.
Okay. So whatever we do further, we could not affect that part of it.
So there are
Isn't that what
currently,
town council told us before, or is that new information?
It's new.
That's new. So it was the micro ones that we couldn't zero. There was one of them we couldn't zero out. right?
No, you couldn't, there are 4 of them that you couldn't zero out. So we went at fall town meeting passed to go down to 4.
One in each category.
Right.
And that now there is one of those 4 that cannot be zeroed out in a further action.
I thought he said before there was one that couldn't been zeroed out.
I don't remember that one.
No.
The one they're talking about now. They
But
did say that.
He did say, it's one and the same. It's not now 2 categories can't be zeroed out.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the board for their comments about any further action on this subject. Yeah.
so I think based off of the comments that were made by residents at town meeting in late October, there are people who would like for marijuana cultivation to be reduced as much as possible. And so from that, I take that there is an appetite to have this go to the ballot.
So, and let's talk about that process. It's apparently not, we have to have a combination of a ballot and a zoning bylaw. But they don't, the zoning bylaw doesn't have to be, it has to be around the same time as the ballot, but it doesn't have to be accomplished before the ballot.
Right.
Yeah.
The town would not have to call a special election just for that ballot.
Okay. So, okay, Daryl, what's your feeling about this?
I'm mixed on it here in terms of I get the intent, though, how much, the existing one is going to be continually grandfathered, even upon sale to another entity. We won't be able to shut them down if they sell, so it's going to be grandfathered as long as it's operating there. We have to give one other category, we have to give it, so I don't know, eliminating the other two essentially is the juice worth the squeeze in terms of how much work it's going to take to both do all of the prep work and then make sure that we have the community support for both the ballot and the town meeting.
I should mention that one of the four, there is not a single example in the whole state, and that's the craft marijuana cooperative.
Yep.
Yeah, so would be, it seems to me that further action would be limiting the ability of the continuation of Sanctuary if they chose to close.
Closing versus selling, I think are two different things. If they close down shop, turn it, so it no longer exists, is one scenario, but if they sell it, they're gonna be grandfathered to whoever the new buyer is going to be.
Well, what I was wondering is if we still allow one cultivator, if Sanctuary closed, that would be one license available, and could someone come in at a different site and go from there?
Yeah,
It seems like they could. I mean, I think it would be a big reach, but anyway. Bartlett.
Well, I kind of the opinion that town meeting expressed a desire to limit growth, and I'm kind of that same sympathy.
Okay. So, from our point of view, we already have a draft of a bylaw that would accomplish this, and would probably have to be adjusted based on this latest case law. So, okay. I'm sort of from Daryl's point of view, but I was the one that had to take the heat at town meeting. I mean, I'm mainly concerned with the scenario of Sanctuary, for whatever reason, Sanctuary, by the way, has two licenses. They have a medical marijuana license and then a consumer cultivation. And, for instance, if they gave up the consumer license and just did medical at that site, that would leave open the potential for another cultivator in town, based on our onerous bylaw, but still. So that's my concern. So I would ask Ivrea to modify this draft to reflect this latest case law and anything else that is coming down the pike. They still don't have the commission still doesn't have a chairman. The person they hired to run it decided not to take the job. So I don't know what's going on.
So my recommendation would be as we continue going down this path, I think we have to make it very straightforward as to what the changes are and what we're accomplishing with it, so we can focus the debate and discussion on what we're actually trying to accomplish here. Because if we end up with 30 pages of change bars in a thing here, I think it's dead on arrival.
I don't think it's dead on arrival, but it's a hard thing to explain.
That's what I mean. I mean, we need to make this very straightforward and clear.
right. If you recall, we did have the two drafts from Ivrea in July or August, and the one to go, one to move forward, the zoning bylaw amendment to move forward to 0 is very short. So, yeah, agreed.
So, okay, based on I won't speak for Mark, but I know Mark is very engaged on this issue, and he, will, when he comes to the next meeting, he can put his 2 cents in. Okay, so is that
Yep.
marching orders clear?
Yep.
Next item, zoning diagnostic request for quotes timeline. And this is another thing that we didn't get money for, right?
Through 2 different town meeting appropriations, we have, the planning board has funds set aside to do the zoning diagnostic and follow-up recodification of our zoning. It's a lot to get our arms around. The first bite of it would be the diagnostic. A consultant would tell us, these are the areas of the bylaw that need to be updated, and provide a kind of a ranking of, and a recommendation of which items to address first. If there are some that are either low-hanging fruit or easy to pick off, or the board could make a decision just to go through everything at once. Given my recommendation is to hold off on this now, that we know we are moving forward with the revitalization roadmap update.
Possible marijuana and ADU.
And floodplain.
Yeah.
That,
Okay. I'm sort of curious about the process, though. So so they would flag areas that need coordination, updating, whatever, and then would we have to go to town meeting for every single one? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for either sequentially, if you have a series of
Yeah.
them, or do everything at once. And that some communities, you break it into 2 parts. Those that are fairly simple and fairly easy to explain, you go through and do those first, and then
You don't think that they would, in a diagnostic situation, would find our zoning perfect and?
oh, no, I do not. And if, during this process, if we're also remembering to take into account the enforcement process, things we could help clean up with definitions and
Well, I remember my time in the Board of Appeals, we had so many hearings about home business, home office, what was this, what was that, and there definitely are things that have changed.
The one thing that would maybe ask to be considered for part of the diagnostic is we have the different pieces there. Could we get some kind of histogram distribution of the usage of the different zoning sections that we have, or zoning types there for maybe the past 15 years, because zoning goes for a long time there. So do we have sections of zoning that aren't even being used in a sense? Or, we've passed a lot of bylaws in terms of different types of things, the senior housing, the form-based codes, all of the different types of things here. Are we using them? And should we be considering whether they're even helpful at this point?
So you mentioned senior housing, and I think there's definitely.
I think there's several different types of senior
Yes,
housing that we have, and I don't know which ones are used.
And I think some of them are written in a way that precludes development of, that makes it so that it's not going to happen.
Right.
But one of the things that we had been talking about was basically a assessment of senior housing needs. Where are we on that?
okay. I've got a simple quote from the Metro West Collaborative Development, who is our housing specialist we have under contract through Assabet Regional Housing Consortium, the 8 communities consortium that allows us to have this access to this consultant. They put together a quick proposal for under $6,000 to do a portion of the housing needs assessment that would help the town understand the need for, what the need is for affordable units, capital A affordable units, and at what affordability level, 30%, 60%, 80% AMI. And see if they could break down the need between the number of for sale units and the number of rental units. Just provide the town some guidance on what we should be looking to see developed.
So this is part of the process of potentially, it relates to 550 King and their affordable housing commitment, but also it relates to the building we're in and whether or not there can be a push to redeveloping this building, since most of it's being emptied out. And the part that's not being emptied out are the actual town offices. But there's no proposals, but there's amorphous movement toward possibly putting town offices in 550 King in some fashion, possibly temporarily in the IBM building, to free this building. However, with this needs assessment, if we find that there isn't really a need for it, the momentum for that effort might abate. But if we find that if the needs assessment identifies a big need, then there may be a push. So, I'm definitely in favor of, and Affordable Housing Trust people, chime in, but I'm definitely in favor of some of this assessment. Comments?
Well, I think at the last meeting when we discussed this topic, I said it would be helpful to have as long as we were able to actually identify that need in a quantitative manner. And I'm fascinated to see how they plan to do that.
Yeah, I am too. I don't know if it's going to be.
Because if it's only anecdotal, that's not going to be a good, I just don't see that would be helpful.
Yeah, I was pleased to see that the scope referenced using community survey data, American ACS data, American Community Survey data. So, yeah.
We always have the option of looking at this assessment and identifying its weaknesses or whatever, but I'm not sure that's a reason for not doing it.
No, I would agree. I think we should.
Okay, Bartlett.
Great.
And you say we have the money?
Let's see, it would be, my recommendation would be, since this is in support of affordable housing, that the Affordable Housing Trust be requested to set those funds aside for this study. And we have the contract in place, contract and contractor in place to allow it to happen this way if.
Oh, I thought this fund, since this request was coming from the planning board, I thought the planning board was going to pay for it.
Well, who's promoting affordable housing? I don't understand how we can have them pay for it without a town meeting. They'd have to go to the.
No, town meeting has
Oh, you already
transferred
have the money,
significant
so
funds
you could
to
do
the
that.
Affordable Housing Trust
And you actually have money for purposes like this.
Yes. It's a clear,
Well, since it's going to benefit everybody, I would suggest that the planning board and the Affordable Housing Trust at least split it.
But do we have any money?
no, we have no town meeting votes that authorize the planning board to spend funds on this assessment.
I don't think it looks good for the Affordable Housing Trust to be in the way of an affordable housing assessment.
It's not in the way, so
I don't see, by not paying for it, I don't see how that's the case.
Well, I think I would like to see their methodology before.
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah, definitely.
I think we need to see the methodology, because it's gotta be more than just estimates. You gotta have something here
Yep,
to
so-
make sure that it's gonna be a worthwhile study.
So I would recommend that the next steps be meeting with the proposer and ask some of these questions.
And actually, they should maybe come to one of your meetings if you're paying for it. I mean, it's sort of, anyway, you need, okay, how do I put this?
I think
as a planning priority, this has been over and over talked about. And in the absence of data, it's hard to plan. One of the things that we were sort of concerned about was Hager Homestead. The deeply affordable didn't seem to go right away, and so does that mean that there wasn't demand for it? But it's a particular project that was very unique. So, we could wait to town meeting and ask for $6,000 for this, or we could do it now.
There was something I read about the Hager Homestead, the guy that was running I don't know if it was the lottery or what it was that was placing, but he said that the time that it took to get a buyer for the 60% unit was not unusual.
Right.
The 60%.
Because typically they don't have that much money.
Right, it's very hard to find
Yeah.
people, that's just a very small demographic. So that was not an unusual time, and therefore it's not an indication that there's no demand. So,
That's great. And then the other issue is, buy versus rent.
yeah.
If it's, if the town's donating a building in whatever fashion, Mark, you're listening to all this, it's not gonna be a for sale situation. Anyway,
So perhaps you could say that because we currently don't have funding authorization for such a study, that you'd ask the Affordable Housing Trust to take lead, at least getting information on what such a study might look like and its viability, and then we determine the payment method as we get closer to either town meeting to get us authorized for it, or they're satisfied that it would be appropriate to come from their budget, instead of saying they should do it.
I think in the situation we're in with this, the town has allocated to the CPC a huge amount of money
Yep.
to this
Yep.
group, and that's great.
As I
So-
said, I totally agree that something like this should be done. I just want to understand what their methodology is
Excellent.
before spending any funding toward that.
And that's responsible. Okay. So can you facilitate this?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that is it.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I hear a
Second?
second?
Nobody wants a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.